Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with illustrator McKay Felt. Enjoy. Yo.
Hello.
What's up?
Not much, man. Just sitting at my desk right now. Happy you figured this out.
Yeah, you're always happy. You seem like a very happy dude.
I guess so.
Like you're smiling right now.
Probably, yeah. I am smiling, actually. I'm looking at myself. I got a little mirror thing here. I think I am smiling. But it's not, I mean, you know, we have a full range of emotions over here, but yeah.
You got the whole thing?
I am a cheery demeanor, yeah. I came prepackaged with the whole, you know, the whole emotion pack.
Really?
Yeah. How are you?
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I do. I have 3 siblings, so I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh, you're the youngest, like me.
Yes. You are? How many do you have siblings then? I'm assuming.
I must. I have four older brothers.
Oh, okay. Oh, geez. Okay, yeah, I have one older brother and 2 older sisters. My brother's the oldest, but
are you all just happy?
No, but I think it's like semi-common for some people to come from. So, like being from Utah originally, I think people have kind of a cheery demeanor out there, I guess. But
I had no idea.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's what stood out to me meeting you the other day. That you were, you know, because artists, they're not always cheerful.
No, definitely. And that's where I like joke about the whole emotion pack, because while I can be like cheerful, I think I do spend a surprising amount of time thinking about non-cheerful things too. You know.
Oh yeah, I don't want to belittle you because I feel like sometimes it's insulting to imply that someone's just happy or
no, but I mean, I guess that's the I would assume that would be some kind of a goal thing, right? To be just kind of semi-content. So I really shouldn't have any kind of contingency.
Well, do you like when you look at your art that you make? Do you like it? Like immediately?
I do.
So that's pretty unique too.
Well, okay. So I like it in as much as like I'm making it, I enjoy it to a certain degree. Like I've always had, like when I look at a drawing, I'll see what I need to improve on, or you know what I mean? There's like an inherent level of dissatisfaction, right? I think my ratio is like I'm satisfied enough to keep drawing and I'm dissatisfied enough to also keep drawing.
Better.
If that makes sense. Yes.
No, it totally makes sense. It's the equation that's necessary. Like you can't be oversatisfied and you can't be so distraught you don't pick up a pen, you know, and do it.
Exactly.
So how is it that first off, do you like Paul Pope?
So I do like Paul Pope. I actually didn't find his work until I was like 24, maybe. So 2014, 2015. But I saw, like, when I saw his work, I felt like a kinship to his lines.
Right. Yeah, his lines. That's what I'm thinking. But so commercially speaking, you seem to be doing a lot of like R&B and rap design. Yes. And that's a pretty fascinating, and I'm sure that's a very fun career. But how did you get into that? You just started drawing. I assume you listened to these things primarily, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I've always enjoyed music my whole life. So it's just like, you know, growing up listening to as much stuff as I could get my hands on. And then it was actually at my first year at university. I went to Camberwell College of Art and the University of the Arts London umbrella. And we had a project where we had to create like a 10-year anniversary kind of packaging thing for this label. And they gave us a list of labels to choose from. And it was like a group project, and Brain Feeder was on there, which I don't know how familiar you are with them.
I'm not.
Okay, it's a label started by this artist named Flying Lotus.
Okay, so I know what that is.
Yeah, it's kind of this like avant-garde electronic jazz hip hop label. It's kind of nice because it's hard to put it in like a confined box.
Yeah.
But anyway, I recognized this label on the list, and I was kind of surprised that the school gave us one. I was like, oh man, they're not like, the biggest thing right now. So it was kind of sick. And so I was like, okay, yeah, let me choose this. We made a thing. Basically, long story short, I posted some progress pictures of what I was working on, and Flying Lotus got in contact with me, and who's like, hey man, let's make this a real thing, and let's, I don't know, do some art together. So he had me do like a couple tour posters, and that's really what kicked it off. And that was back in like 2014.
Wow. Yeah. So one of those school projects actually paid off. I feel like that's a very typical illustration program project. And it's cool that it actually immediately put you where you wanted to be.
Yeah. And it was really bizarre. I think the thing too was like, it just felt so natural, because then once they came out to London, I went to one of their shows and ended up meeting up with them, and just clicking like friends wise and just like interests. And, I obviously like really respected their music and their exploration as like artists and like their technical capabilities too. So it was just a really funny, like random experience that like led somewhere fun.
So that's like pretty fortunate and wonderful that you immediately went from school to doing the work you wanted to do. Is that right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I don't know if I even necessarily had a plan. Like I wanted to do that in general. I just, like I said, I always enjoyed it, and I knew I wanted to do illustration. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then, yeah, luckily that project came. And so then the rest of my time at uni, I was also doing professional work. So part of me sometimes is like, I wasn't happy with my final project. There's like a few things where I'm like, oh man, my schoolwork fell behind, but I'm where I needed to go. So
yeah, I wouldn't worry about that in this context. So you actually hang out within that scene as well. So it's holistic like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so as my student visa ran out, I had to come back to the States, and I had been doing stuff with them for a couple years at that point, and just like talking online. And Lotus was like, you should come out to LA. And so I looked at stuff out here, and I was like, all right. And so then I moved out here in like 2017. And wow. So I've hung out with those guys out here, and it's just been like a really great like community of just, I don't know, making stuff and just, I don't know, mayhem,
Yeah. So you went from Utah to England to LA. Is that
yes.
accurate?
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating. And how'd you get this name? That's your real name?
My parents, yes. They made the decision.
What were they thinking?
That's a good question. I think they had a couple other names before McKay. Like, I don't think that was their first choice. And McKay, I think it's like a Scottish name originally. Irish too. There's like variations of it in Irish and Scottish, but it was a name that wasn't super popular, but I guess floated around in like Utah culture as like a surname from just kind of like UK immigrants, that came and walked across the whole country in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for whatever reason that was on their docket, and they chose that.
McKay Felt.
Yes.
Yeah, it's unique.
Thank you. What's the etymology of your last name?
Just olives, olive trees.
Yeah.
Somebody out there was messing around with olives for sure.
They're like, man, this guy really likes olives.
Yeah. It had to be something. I mean, maybe I don't know what felt is an interesting one.
Yeah, but that one actually, if I remember right, I think that was from like Scandinavia somewhere, like I want to say like Norway or Sweden, and he came over, and then like at Ellis Island or something, they were like, I think it was Fedelt or something.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we're gonna take that D out. We can just say Felt.
All right, so that's how you get there.
Yeah.
So it looks like you worked on this crazy cat head.
Oh, the Thundercat's cat head.
Is that like a peak? Career peak? It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. I guess. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, yeah. I think it was fun. I think I don't necessarily look at it as such as peaks and valleys, or maybe there is. I don't know, man. It was basically just random, and it was fun, and I hadn't done that yet. And we've been pretty good friends at this point. We've been hanging out for a few years and stuff. So I was in London. I think I was actually a part of an exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and his team hit me up while I was out there, and they're like, we need a cat head that's stage design like tomorrow. And so I drew it up real quick, and their fabrications team made it, and they did an amazing job.
Yeah, I guess now I'm thinking about it, like the involvement from your end, it's mostly a fabrication job. Because
100%.
I do fabrication, and looking at that, I'm like, wow, that's quite nice.
It's split into like 3 parts, and
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was great.
It's so fascinating to me that you're just within that scene based on almost the recommendation of a teacher in respect to the label. That's such a strange trajectory. I rarely hear about something so quick and clean, in a sense, you know?
Yeah.
Not trying to minimize the accomplishment. It just seems
not at all.
Really aligned.
Listen, I'm baffled as well. Like I for a long time I was just like, what's going on? Like I enjoy drawing and I like myself, but it wasn't like matching up, you know. I had kind of that imposter syndrome stuff, which frankly I still have to a certain degree, but like, yeah, no, very lucky, very bizarre. And just, I think it's been great to meet a lot of different musicians, and I feel like Neve and How I Met You guys, like that's like my small pocket of like visual artist friends out here. I feel like the majority of the people I see do stuff in music. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, it's fun to have someone who kind of just sonically creates and have that kind of feed you next, like when you're standing next to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. No, they're different energies. A lot of artists, visual artists, especially illustrators, seem to live off of music in terms of the fuel.
Definitely. But what I've loved about like being out in LA and, you know, Neve, I actually met him before I found my spot out here. We had talked online, and I was staying with a friend out here. I was kind of scoping out apartments, and we met up. He came and picked me up, and we went to a cafe and just started drawing. And then I think that was back in like 2017, 2016 or something. And so it's just been like meeting friends out here, you know, Jesse and everybody since. Like Jesse Ballmer, I feel like whenever I see his drawings, I'm like, oh my God, I need to level up.
Yeah, I get it. Do you enjoy living in LA? It's been what, 5-6 years? That's a good amount of time. It's enough for you to kind of say something about it, you know, with some certainty.
Yeah, I would say I enjoy it now. Like I like the people are very nice. I think I understand the city more. You hear like a lot of people talk about the more industry side of LA, and they'll be like, oh, you know, have their complaints. But I feel like if you really look at it as like just an actual place in the communities and you don't focus on that stuff, it's really nice. But I would say it's a little bit sleepy for me because I grew up in kind of a suburbia type situation. So I felt like London was like very engaging for me and kind of like lit my brain on fire. And so like coming back to like a suburban area has kind of made it a little bit sleepy for me.
Yeah. I mean, what's the daily situation? Like, are you working? I saw you sent me this comic over. How much time do you get for personal work?
Not too much. Right now, it's been pretty busy with freelance work for just like music projects. I've been working on this hip hop show with Bandcamp for the past couple of years. So it's like every other week I'll do an illustration for their hip hop show.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of coming out of Oakland, and yeah, so that's like a regular thing. That's like the most regular gig I've had the whole time as an illustrator, which is nice. But so I've got like that going on, and then other artist stuff, and then my projects that I want to finish, and adult life that you have to take care of your corporeal vessel, you know?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Beats me. Seems like breaking things down into small tasks and keeping somewhat of a schedule, you know?
Oh yeah. Do you write your schedule down the day before, the day after? No, you just want to.
No, yeah. I've had time periods when I was younger where I was like super rigid with my scheduling, and it was cool. It was something, it was nice. And, but I feel like I had a bit of a pendulum swing, and then I went super disorganized, no schedule, all of this stuff. And that had its perks and cons. And
do you think
I feel like I'm finding the balance right now.
Sure. It's always going to be like that. But do you think the art looks any different in those phases?
Yes. I would say my earlier work would be a lot more tighter, like clean line work. So
it correlates. When you're organized, it's tight.
I would think so. Well, but that being said, if I'm disorganized, I can still make a tight drawing. You know what I mean? I think just in the personal work, seeing the like energy of the art that you make, it's a little bit different.
Totally. I mean, some people have it inverted, right? If they're super orderly in their life, they put out crazy, weird, sloppy paintings. Some people are just, more aligned. Like if they're organized, the stuff's going to be tight. I'm thinking about my own work. Sometimes I don't know what that cycle is in terms of like loose or tight. It's, do
you have a default? Like,
it's a good question. I don't know if I believe in I believe in an essence, and I think that essence can take many forms.
Yeah.
And if your essence is potent enough, interesting enough, then you don't really need to worry too much later in life when you're like in your 30s drawing.
Yeah.
But if you haven't cultivated that, you're kind of always going to use style to hide how boring the ideas or work are.
Right.
But the essence question's hard because, I think even about being a good person, morally speaking, like, I never quite grasped what it meant to be yourself. I don't know if that means like just follow your impulses and do whatever you're feeling emotionally.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense to me. Like you should be, you should understand your essence and nature, but you're refining that thing. So there's plenty of times I make a drawing and I don't see I don't like what I see in the mirror in essence, And
sure.
I try to fight myself in that sense. Like if I make a super tight illustration, I'm probably going to make a really quick and loose personal thing. Yeah. And the best way to talk about it is like a diet.
No, I feel like I'm very similar to that, where it's almost like, a diet, or like it's certain itches you have to scratch, and they kind of, you bounce around. No, I definitely see that. And I think that's something that is really difficult. And I could imagine maybe being difficult for a younger person, like trying to be an artist right now. I think just with the level of like social media with sharing art, I think there's like a lot of emphasis on like the shell of the artwork. Like, how can I make this as cool or as grabby as possible? But they forget to put in the internal organs,
To be fair, I don't think they have much to put in, when you're 20. For some reason,
that's fair.
Yeah. People think that 20-year-olds think everyone should know what they're on about, but as you get older, you realize how completely vapid and uninteresting and usually conformed the opinion you have when you're 20 is, despite you thinking the opposite.
Yeah.
So you think about artists in the past, they weren't relevant until they were much older often and had gone to war or had some like crazy disease and had families. Like this idea of a career artist in the way we see it now, where you're kind of building it up from college and then you're getting like sexy in your 20s and trying to sell that with the art.
Yeah, right.
This is more like a fashion model trajectory. It's almost musical in the sense of like musicians have a similar problem, I would say. Like
there's a lot invested in the persona.
Yeah. And you should
with the art.
You're gonna want to be attractive to some degree, I think, especially as a musician. Because Instagram is a visual format, and obviously art is too. But
that was the beauty of back in the day. I feel like you could, and then of course I'm not like I'm comparing and contrasting to some degree, but I'm not saying one is better than the other. But it's like comparatively back in the day, you could be this super hideous old dude and hide in your house in the woods and display artworks and then hopefully have that travel around, and it doesn't really matter. Nobody really cares what you look like.
Yeah. There's less to sell there. There's just the work. Now you can be leveraging so many components of your personality, etc. I was uncomfortable with it for so long. Like I used to put a drawing on Tumblr every day for like 3-4 years, and that helped me, keep the pressure on, develop a rigor. And then I just, life changed and I found other ways of making money related to art that I didn't need to show. And because illustration's much more of a hustle than design work or fabrication. Like those things are, like, you can get work almost anywhere.
Is that mainly what you do career-wise, design work and fabrication?
Well, it's hard to talk about what I do. I also run an art center, so I like curate and program that. I used to run a gallery.
Oh, cool.
And I do a lot of design for that stuff. And then I do a lot of furniture design and store build outs. Amazing. But, my whole thing was I always wanted to expand beyond being an illustrator because I wanted the challenges of stepping into real business, like, and learning to negotiate. I mean, it's definitely exhausting. It's much more of a human life than the art life I used to live where I would hide out for most of my time and draw.
No, it definitely is. And I mean, I can sympathize with that to a certain degree in that, like, I'm do all of my business stuff. I don't have a manager or agency or anything. So I've noticed that I was it took less of a mental shift for me to do that a little bit a while ago, but I feel like now I'm noticing the difference. It's getting a little bit tougher to do business the deeper I try to go in the other part.
You mean like the relationship between, because art is, you get lost in that art world and it's not something that's so rigid or predictable in terms of time.
Yeah, in terms of time, in terms of I feel like there's this like coyness. I guess if I'm trying to, let's see if I can say this, like in terms of like if you're sitting in a chair or thinking or have your sketchbook out daydreaming, I don't know, there's like that like almost like walking in a forest and like watching animals or whatever and not trying to interact with them. There's almost like this softness or coyness that you can kind of have where, or maybe like you said, it's not something like rigid or time based, and then coming out into the business world, it's very like, you need to be confident. You need to say this, you need to decide this, it's just very like assertive and abrasive. So it's kind of like a swap between that, like kind of listlessness to like an aggressive, like
it's war.
Yeah.
It's like obviously sublimated, but because real war is far more brutal, but
definitely
that's,
do you find that like, what's your experience like with those two worlds?
Yeah. Well, I think probably both of us and many people of this nature have to live in kind of like a schizo mode. And I struggle with the balance at times, like the personal work just dropped off a little bit this year, but I'm learning more lessons probably in the other realm, the business realm and just the work realm. Yeah. So I'm not opposed to it because my intent is to grow into an adult and have kids and, take on responsibilities that I didn't think I would in my 20s. But, I don't think our generation is that good at acknowledging sacrifices. And so we really try to like get everything from both sides at all times.
Yeah.
And I think we're all like, I can see that in myself at times because, you know, there's definitely a sacrifice. I used to make really weird comics that were borderline, you know, they sold pretty well, but it's not like you can make a living off them unless you live like a scumbag kind of.
For real.
I don't mean morally, but just like
situationally, you have to make a lot of sacrifices.
And that's fun at the time.
Yeah.
But switching between the two is really hard. Fortunately, I think I can get into concentrated states of making pretty quick. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be driven insane. And I think illustration kind of taught me that. But but I think it's kind of confusing for the people around me at times, like me trying to switch in and out of these roles. It's hard for me to... Yeah, it's just schizo. It really is. And
it almost brings me reassurance to hear you say that, though, because I feel like oftentimes I'm not fully in either world that I want to be. Do you know what I mean? You kind of feel like you walk a little bit further down the path and someone's like, hey, no, come over here. You got to come back. And then you go to them and then they're like, no, come back. And so you're kind of in this back and forth of walking between.
Yeah, there's this article that I think it's called Manager versus Maker Time. And in the short, it's just like makers need about like 4 to 6 hours blocked on undisturbed time to get anything out of them, the process. Yeah. And then manager time is like 15-minute meetings all day, left and right. And unfortunately, I'm probably skewing more towards manager time at the moment. Like I have to meet people all the time. So I'm trying to impose this structure a little more rigidly because I think unless you have discipline, you kind of end up losing it all.
Yes.
And, I might just need to sleep less hours, although I enjoy sleeping. It's just like,
sleeping is
I don't even have a kid yet. I'm so impressed by people with kids who keep being prolific. And
no, I mean, talk about like sacrifice or like a struggle to like maintain something beyond just looking after the child. Because I feel like I've got a little puppy, and I guess he's not a puppy anymore. He's like 4 years old. But the amount of like time or like attention that I just like gave to him, I was like, man, I really don't know if I could do a whole child, because I feel like I would put like my entire attention on the kid. I feel like I wouldn't be able to go as deep maybe, but that could just be me thinking about it, not really knowing my experience.
Well, yeah, and it's almost a wish for sociopathy. Like, and by that I mean, there's some like weird dark temptation to be like, oh, I could have a kid and just not care, and then like keep focusing on it, and then care when I want. But
right,
it's pretty much not. It's definitely not how it works.
No, yeah. If I were to imagine being the child, I don't know if I would want my father to be in that kind of mentality.
No, I mean, I think it's cool to have I don't know what it would be like. My father's pretty well rounded. He wasn't like an extreme dude who was just like, Elon Musk's got like 11 kids or something. Like, in one hand, it's like he's a fascinating persona, but I don't know if I don't know the dude, but I don't know if he's a good father per se. It sounds pretty unlikely if you have that many kids. But
do you feel like there is well, I guess I don't know this because we haven't had too many conversations before this. Do you feel like there is like, do you feel a moral obligation to like really immerse yourself in your adulthood, have a family, have a child? And does that like compete with an artist? Does one feel more fulfilling to you, or can they coexist?
I mean, I feel a moral obligation in everything except art. Like that's the one place I don't think art and morality have anything to do with each other personally. Yeah. But I do think everything outside of that, I'm very moralistic about my own behavior. Yeah. And yeah, I do feel that there is a moral obligation for your life to evolve and change and for you to take on more responsibility. And I do think there's a wild tension there. A lot of people I interview for this podcast, that is one of the focus I try to go towards, is people with kids or newborns and how that affected their process, and typically, probably because humans skew towards optimism, at least in practice, like I think they just say, it just makes your time super precious. You don't fuck around. And
that's what I've heard as well. Yeah. It almost like provide like a more fuel or like a bigger fire underneath you to be like, all right, well, I've got a little human to take care of. Let me really do my shit. Like,
No, there's a, your back's against the wall in all ways. And I think some people that probably crushes, frankly. So some people it probably brings out the best. And, what I did when I first started thinking about it, I just kept looking up really good artists and then seeing if they had kids, and then further seeing if they actually took care of those kids, like trying to understand.
Oh man, yeah. I'm sure there's a way to do it. You know what I mean? I don't think it needs to be exclusive. I feel like I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, and I think it's hilarious when I visit like home, just as the mentality of kids. And I think as an artist, like having one, I think I would be really interested too in just like how you can not shape the kid's mind, because I think that's a little bit too like manipulative, you know what I memean? But like just creating like this space for it. I think what I'm trying to get at is like, I want to have a kid and try and raise them in a healthy way, like outside of all of these social systems that we've set up. Like I want to have a little alien baby and see what they bring out.
That's a fantasy, because you see real quick like how impossible that is.
It is. It's like
that's an act
to physically survive. Like
it's just an act of extreme aggression to try to create that separation. It's like, it's fair to say that I think each time period has its social problems and technological problems, and people still had kids and kind of dealt with it. Yeah. But some try to run off and like keep their kids in a house for 18 years or something. That doesn't work either.
Oh no, 100%.
The thing is, they meet their peers, and their peers are part of the society, and those people influence them just as much as their parents. So,
right.
I think about it a lot.
The inescapability of being like a social primate. It's like you're like damned to like participate in everything. It doesn't necessarily need to be damned, but you know what I mean. You're forced to kind of, you're cool. Biologically wired.
You have to accept the tragedy of all times, I think modern people think they can escape that tragedy by being distracted or consuming and avoiding it. But there's a tragic element to everything that's worth doing, I think, and kids included. So, I get why it's kind of people avoid doing it as well. For me, I was always trying to figure out if making art could satiate the part of yourself that making a kid, fulfilled for people. And in the final assessment, after having looked at it and talked to parents, I don't think they're the same thing. They probably have a similar impulse, but they're completely different. And I mean, I think it's, I just try to remember, everyone, no matter the most efficient people, like if you look at their day, they probably waste a couple hours here and there.
Oh yeah.
And that's, and then you look at the past and like the amount of time people had to make art probably wasn't even that much. So they just really got after it when they could.
Right. And I feel like we're so primed for like just hyper efficiency and trying to do as much as we can before we either die or like, fall out of relevance, or however you're trying to frame wherever you're coming from. But it's like, I think with you, it's like the time pressures are very interesting, because I don't know. I think it's just the type of art is very, it's a different spirit in it, I guess. Just like you said, there wasn't a rush for quantity and you could really dive into something. I don't know. I think about like sometimes like Egon Schiele's art or whatever, like he died when he was 28, I think.
Yeah, just fucking all the time.
Yeah, and just like I don't know how much he fucked or not, but
I think he was fucking all the time. That's
sure. And you know what? I hope he had a great time.
I think he did.
Because he wasn't around for a long time, you know?
Damn, he died from the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
28.
Yes. And so it's like, it's very bizarre to look at some artist's life back then and the body of work that they make in just a short span of years. And I think there's a temptation to blame like your surroundings as well. Like, oh, if I was in another time period or a different city or a different country or like this and that, maybe my output would be, you know, X or Y.
Sure.
So.
No, I mean, I love efficiency, but like when I use that word, there's a, I'm not talking like a machine, right? But I am talking, you know, like I do think there's a moral obligation to use the gifts you were given to the max. You know, I think like,
yes,
like I'm not a person who relaxes per se. Even when I go on vacation or something, I'm not interested in doing nothing. In fact, I like doing it like projects on vacation if possible. And I just think, you know, obviously I cultivated a skill, but I was also given one. So, you know, outside of like this maybe capitalistic impulse, it's more for me a spiritual duty to, you know, make the best stuff you can and make it as much as you can. And that's obviously a pressure and a burden that's stressful, but that comes with the territory. You know, you don't just get to fucking doodle all day. That's just
no, 100%. And I feel like I really, I agree with you on that. I feel very similarly. And I think in a weird way, within the last couple years, I feel like just doodling in a sketchbook, it feels more like a misuse of time than it did in the past. You know what I mean?
Oh,
depending on what time you do it, it's like, you know, just, but that desire to want to make something with intention or like this or that. I feel like enjoyable sketchbook moments come when, like, you know, you are out somewhere, you're with friends or something, and I don't necessarily dedicate hours to just sketch anymore.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's a good thing because I miss the frivolity of my. Well, I don't yearn for it, but like there was a frivolity about my past life where the scribbling and doodling was, you might think of it as like starting a fire. I had more kindling, you know, just because I was just like, and now I'm just fucking shooting fireballs out without any real.
Well, I mean, that's it. There's so much, like, I think too, just like developing a relationship with your craft, and that sketchbook time is super necessary, and it will always be necessary, but just the time and how you approach it, I think, changes with where you are in your practice.
Yeah. I mean, I've in my whole lifetime, I've probably filled like 2 sketchbooks.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like no, let me clarify.
I
mean, what I mean is like, go to page 1 to the end and focus on that book and fill it. I don't know why. I'm just like ripping shit out, you know, putting it here.
Yeah.
I've like always lacked this ability and focus to just do one sketchbook. Whereas Neve has like, especially like when he was in college, he just has like these, you know, from first page to the last, just knocking out sketchbooks. But somehow it might be the way I play with the computer now, where like the sketch, you know, it's just kind of ripped up and I take a photo of it or throw it on the computer and then like quickly, you know, how digital is your process?
I would say it's about half-ish digital. I couldn't give you an exact ratio. I still prefer to do a lot of the like groundwork drafting, like thumbnails, and then even the final piece on like physical paper. And then if I'm inking or something, you know, I'll prefer to do that with paper, like either a dip pen, like G pen, quill thing, or a brush or something. And I feel like I feel like you can get so much more of a range of marks, the unpredictability organically, that doesn't quite exist in the same way for me digitally. Like I really respect digital artists, and there are some kids that can do like crazy shit with it. So I think that's amazing. But I think for me, like the tactile experience of like working with something is very important. And then I'll scan it and do like coloring and editing and different effects and stuff on like Photoshop. Now Procreate. I've been doing a lot on Procreate lately.
Yeah, I like that about the work. I feel like I can see that. You might say that the digital moments are chosen, sparingly where necessary. And
exactly.
then in terms of like working in the sketchbook or inking, yeah, I think that comes through.
No, I appreciate that. I'm like Neve. I feel like him and I've really connected in the sketchbook front. But I have like drawers and boxes full of sketchbooks.
And you focus, you go front to back. Like you can do that.
I mean, yes. Yeah, I have a lot that are like that, but I also have a lot that are like the last 20 pages or the last 5 pages that weren't filled in or something,
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, but I definitely do have quite a bit from front to back. And I feel like that college, likewise for me, like really got me into my sketchbook practice. Because the grading was really interesting at Camberwell because you had to show your final piece, but then you had to also turn in your research that went into that piece, and you were also graded on your research, which coming from American schooling, they don't give a fuck about that, and it's like just as long as your technical skills are there, like this and this, the final piece will grade you. And then in London, they were just like, we don't really care about your technical skills. We want to see how efficiently you communicated what you wanted, but we want to see how you got there, So that was a big shift. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I forgot where I was going with that there, but
it sounds like a pretty decent school experience, honestly.
Yeah, it was a perfect balance. I feel like for me, it really kind of got in a way of thinking.
And you went in, you said you had like, you've been drawing since you were little and you wanted to be an illustrator. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been drawing as long as I can remember. And it just was something that I could do always. And I enjoyed it, like during classes, just kind of anywhere I would be drawing. I could also like not draw, but I was kind of obsessively drawing. And then I feel like it was always kind of the plan in high school. I was like, yeah, I'll go to college, but it always felt like this kind of soft thing. And then there was some point, I did 2 years at Utah State University, and it was either the first or second year. I was working at a call center, and I brought my sketchbook, and I was like, man, I don't want to work a job ever again like this. And I remember that's when I like really like buckled down and like dove into my shit.
But yeah, it sounds like it was necessary to go to that call center.
Yeah.
It's good to work. It's good to work shit like that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of interesting, like random little day jobs like that. So I feel like it's nice, even when you get bogged down by some of the hustle side effects of illustration. It's like, man, okay, at least I'm like suffering for something I really love and not just like misplacing it, misplacing my suffering.
No, ultimately it's, if one is fortunate enough to work in any fashion in this respect, it's just a good thing. Just a blessing.
No, definitely.
Like there's a lot of fucking shitty jobs out there.
Which is bizarre. And I think that's where I would like to bring it back to the kid and the social structure things. I just think it's so interesting. And again, I'm not like a, academic or super deep thinker or whatever public, I don't know. But I would say it would be just really interesting to see what things look like based on a different framework than us like just being like, okay, we need to go in and labor all day.
Well, I think what's going to happen is see a tremendous amount of automation.
Yeah, it's UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Probably. I mean, yeah, I don't even like thinking about or talking about it. And its impact, but
can I ask you? Oh, okay, wait. I'll let you finish, and then I have a question I want to ask you.
I generally believe humans who are not at work, and by at work I don't mean going to work, but like interested in difficult disciplined things, tinkering, they're just dangerous. So like,
Definitely.
I do believe the devil's, what did I say?
The idle hands.
Idle hands are the devil's plaything. Like, I think that's pretty true. And I think, like, I don't know what automation will bring, because I don't think people are happy just, like, I think over consuming is bad too. So it's this weird moment in history sometimes where it feels like there's just like insurmountable attacks on all sides. But I do think, you know, like Lord of the Rings is a depiction of, I think it's like in some sense just what reality is, you know.
Expound on that. I'm interested.
Well, like Tolkien, one was Christian, and there's definitely this idea in Christianity that like the game isn't rigged for you to win. It's almost like it's, you know, think about it, like the god of the religion is this dude who is doing everything right morally, and then everyone around him betrays him and shits on him. Right. And kills him. And like that's your central narrative, right? So that kind of sets you, I was raised Roman Catholic, so like that sets the tone for life, right?
Definitely.
Like
there's that finding the divine in like suffering and
and like and don't expect too much from the state or even like your friends or almost anyone. It's fucking crazy.
Raised in a very similar mindset. So
and Lord of the Rings is, I think, very much like Tolkien is he was Christian, and that story has that feeling of like, Jesus, the odds are just awful right here. And then everyone's going to do everything they can to destroy this ring, but the assumption should be made it's just going to keep happening, you know, like these and Star Wars, you know, like there's obviously that feeling of holy shit, there's like this enormous empire, and then there's like 50 people flying around. That's how it feels to me, like trying to defeat it. And I think that's just a description of life in some sense. You know, I know I know certain people have really good lives that kind of avoid that, and then some people have the opposite. But all that to say, like, and that's why I don't want to talk about AI, but there's so many reasons you could become, you know, just really distraught if you think about it too much. And then it stops you from being just a good person and cheerful. And that's why I try not to overthink the whole kids thing, because it's just like, you know, people had kids after World War I and II, which are just like the most, and I'm saying like shortly after. It's just like
right.
It's pretty fucking shocking to me.
No, definitely. But I mean, like, I think it's interesting too on like how applicable it is on like a personal scale, and then on like a macro scale of just like a species or whatever. In terms of like finding motivation, or like, is there a line to say, okay, what's the point? Or like you keep going, but then like finding the why to keep going. And I think I'm like reading through Berserk for my first time. And I loved the point where he meets that one Skull Knight, and not to be I don't think it's a spoiler, but he like refers to Guts, the protagonist, as like struggler. And I loved that.
He called him a struggler.
Yeah. He like refers to him. He's like something, you struggler. And then like he brings up this, like just says it in this thing, but just the choice of words for that, and like that character's path, and the amount of course, Berserk is just like balls to the wall, like shonen manga, like gnarly, but there's like something to it in the suffering and like the odds that are frankly like impossible for him to beat, but he like, you know, walks into that.
Yeah, and I mean, is it this? It will be a storm of death, but take heed, struggler. Struggle, endure, contend, for that alone is the sword of one who defies death.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish I had the money to just buy all the physical Berserks. But
so that's what I'm recently doing. I'm finally going through, but I bought so many and it's not okay. I'm getting the deluxe ones, but I'm like reading them in a day.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's an unbelievable.
Oh, there's one more I took a picture of here. I think Guts is like talking to Casca or something, but he's like, did you know the jinx of the battlefield? If you spend too much time focused on the dead or broken, you'll find death perched on your shoulder. And I think it's that idea of just like, if you're because like these things exist, right? Like, I don't think it's a bad thing to be like lost in thought or those emotions, like these feelings of like insurmountable helplessness, right? Obviously, if you stay there too long, it's going to affect you. And that varies for person to person. But I think, it provides that contrast. But I'm a very big believer in that. It seems like, I say that in a way of, I feel like I'm learning more and more, is you do need that like movement, like you said earlier, like the stagnation and just like sitting and thinking, or like whatever, like that just brings on the opposite of life and movement. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, anything that stagnates is typically in a bad state. And it's like why I liked making comics, like,
yeah,
I wouldn't say they were fun ever, but
yeah,
except when I made it with Neve, like maybe it was like a cheat code, like making it with your good friend.
Yeah. I want to ask how that process was.
Well, it was delightful. I mean, we've drawn together for so long that we basically become a third being and just, worked on every panel. And
because reading the comic, I have it like the synergy you're talking about is there. It feels like you were one artist doing the panels.
Yeah, I think that's the point for us, like I do also like collaboration where it's really stark contrast, where it's like, this person clearly did that and this person clearly did the other thing. But I don't know of any other book made like that, but me and him have a very unique relationship. But I think the struggle was reduced there. I mean, it took us like 3 years because we had other shit to do. But, when I used to make just comics, it was more like going to which I don't do, like going to the gym to lift weights than, I don't know, like some enjoyable chill task.
Yeah, the payoff, there's not an immediate payoff. It's just this, you need to consistently put in like work. And then eventually, after some time has passed, if you've been consistent, you can look at what you've done.
Yeah, from like the mountaintop,
Yes.
And for me, that struggle entails some kind of gift to the gods or to the viewer. Like, I really do believe viewers like to see pain or struggle in the work. And I don't mean in some sadomasochistic way. They just want to see like...
No,
like,
I agree.
Yeah, Berserk is a good example. Like, if you step back, you're like, Jesus, this is one dude, one lifetime.
The amount of pages and lines on just panel by panel. Like...
It's insane.
It's unnerving. Like, I look at that and I legitimately cannot conceptualize how someone physically drew that much.
Oof, I mean, yeah.
Like and that's where I mean, like, talk about a sacrifice, because all of that time spent at the page is time not living Kentaro Miura's life. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah. Sometimes I wonder if I hope he had a good life,
I do too. I bet his back hurt. His wrist hurt, probably.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
he could be in. I don't remember the cause of his passing, so maybe, I don't know, his physical condition,
but that's the hard part is when you don't have that discipline and you start doing illustration and you can make $500 in like a day drawing some shit.
Yeah.
It's really hard when your life starts to get better. And by that, I just mean like the circumstantial stuff in your life. Like maybe you have a nicer place to live in, and maybe now you live in a nicer city. And all these things oddly start to stack up against the actual art making time. Maybe you have a friend group, and the best thing is you have great friends who are better at drawing than you that push you.
For sure.
But I do think there's countless examples of artists getting very famous, and then it's just like the joys of life displace the joys of making the art.
Right. And so then I'm like, what's the emotion attached to that? Like, is that okay for an artist to do? Like, what is that their right to be like, you know what, I've done this, I'm gonna, choose to do whatever with my time? Or are they like, because of their, proclivities or talents or whatever, are they like are they demanded to use that into the,
Yeah, I mean, life is very complex, so I think it can only be judged, well, probably not by any of us, but it's
sure.
like, case to case. I do think, I don't know, I hate seeing wasted talent, and it comes in many forms,
Yeah.
It's really tricky. That's why I admire these people who can sit down and draw a book for 50 years, and it's just like this unflinching dedication to the thing. It's just so, I'm not like that. Like, I have an unflinching dedication to certain more abstract general concepts related to art, but not to like literally a character who keeps reappearing in the same comic. That's like a restriction and constraint that I am too immature to accept in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Who knows?
I just think there's like that's so fucking crazy. Basically, he's saying like, I can find the world within Guts, and Guts is enough for me to do everything I need to do in a lifetime. I think there's something really amazing about that.
Same. It's like the inner world of him, or just the process of it, is so enriching that, like, and again, I don't know his mind state. He could be a Miyazaki type guy who just like smokes and bitches about his work the whole time and being like, oh man. And then they just make incredible stuff.
Yeah, I love that about Miyazaki.
Or he could have just been completely, encaptured by it. Or
he's probably a totally chill, nice dude who just...
Yeah. Well, it would have been great to meet him. Have you seen, I've said this to some friends, but there's this little documentary series called Urasawa no Manben. And it's this manga artist in Urasawa, and he did like 20th Century Boys and a bunch of other famous ones. But he goes around and visits different manga artists, and they film their process of them working on pages, and they kind of talk with each other about drawing. And the first time I like watched those videos, it was incredible. I feel like I saw people like speaking a language that I've never like really talked with somebody. You know what I mean? Just their dedication and that to the line and their like world that they're building. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, I got to check that out. I think I may have seen.
There's one with Junji Ito. I bet you can find that one online.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe Maruo. No, not Maruo. The guy who did Overfiend. The fuck? You know what I'm talking about? The tentacle. He's like the inventor of the tentacle porn, or at least.
Yeah. Wait, I think I know who you're talking about, but I don't remember if they had one on him or not.
Yeah, I mean, he's like I actually have some of his originals, which cost like nothing. They were like $200 somehow. That's what's even crazier is like Toshio Maeda.
Yeah.
Maybe
super colorful work, right? But like pretty violent.
It's everything. Yeah,
sure.
It's pretty wild that. Yeah, I mean, he's just like
Toshio.
His whole career. His whole career is like just been decades, It's inspiring. I'm not really trying to read tentacle porn at this point, but I still am.
No, sure. But you can respect the, I don't know, the dedication or like whatever it is that they put it into. There's a certain kind of practice that they do, whether it's even tentacle porn or something like super, I don't know, uplifting or educational to people. I don't know.
It's probably even more for me. I've always been attracted by these people who will sit down and use their precious life, energy, and talent to make super, super weird stuff. And Japan is the king of that.
It is. There's this one artist. I'm going to walk to my bookshelf real quick that I've been reading recently because I've only seen his stuff translated just recently. What's his name? Daisuke Ichiba.
No, how do you spell that?
Daisuke and then Ichiba. Ichiba. Yeah.
No, I don't know this. Oh, I've seen some of this work. But wow,
so I've got about like 3 books of his, and it's just like really kind of crude drawings, like very non-linear storytelling, just like bizarro madness. But there's something about it that's like, I don't know.
So
it does something.
You know, in terms of inspiration, people you're looking at right now, is this one of them?
I don't know. Not so much in terms of inspiration for my work. I think there's a certain energy, like with the freeness of him expressing an idea. I think I really respect that. Just like the willingness to dive into absurdity, you know?
Yeah.
I think I respect that about him for sure. And that, like, not being attached to the refinedness of his drawings. I think I've loved that too after, like, I don't know. It's like you see with, I know I mentioned Schiele earlier, or Picasso or whoever, how their work is like when they're younger or whatever is like really tight and technical. And you see them kind of exploring more with either abstraction or like the looseness of their stuff. I think in music too, I really enjoy that. I think that's what I like a lot about like jazz shit and like different things, is these like technically competent people that like choose to not play in that fashion, or they use that technicality but just go into the abstraction, you know?
Yeah, I think often they hide their technicality in a way that other artists can see, but non-artists don't see, which is often a good thing.
Right. And that's what I like. I think there's a element of me that would like to be more comfortable with that, and being like, I really want to dive in and explore certain emotions or methods and absolutely shed any kind of, you know, what is this group of people? Will it be received or not, or whatever, you know, kind of outside of this illustrator world that I've been living in, where it's like, you're doing client work, you're doing this and this. It's important, you know, how people receive something. So,
yeah, I find that artists often get hung up on that, but usually when they, you know, step outside of it, they probably get less likes, but they'll have some breakthroughs, you know?
Definitely.
So I encourage that. Like, I don't know. I think sometimes people are a little more flexible than one imagines in terms of like the people who actually like your work. You know? You know, there might be people, it's the same for music, right? People might like the first couple albums of someone, and then, you know, it just happened to fit their preferences at the time. But as the artist grows decades at a time, like, they don't like the artist per se. They liked what was coming out right then and there. And then there's people who are hardcore.
Yeah, I think that's the type of viewer, however the person is receiving the art. Is someone receiving something to just kind of eat something real quick? They're looking for a snack, or are they kind of person that's like, even if it is a snack, they're like, okay, what's the ingredients? Like, you know?
True. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, a little more involved.
Yeah.
So with this comic book, is this one of your major side personal projects?
Yeah. So I initially like had this idea for the comic back in like 2015, I think. And for a long time, it's just been like sketchbook sketches of characters and different outlines that I've written and rewritten a bunch of times. And, you know, kind of these attempts. And I feel like I've gotten to the point. I drew the first part of that part one, maybe like 2019, I think, right before the pandemic kind of hit. And then I finished the second part of it maybe like 6 months ago. So I feel like I've finally gotten to this point where I've been in the world enough in my head, and that over planning is complicating the process. So I'm just sitting down and drawing it out now. Without any really kind of plan. So I'm just like trying to feel the rhythm of the story, and just make sure the feelings are there, and not like try and serve something too intentionally, or like, you know.
Yeah. No, I get that. It can become restrictive when your head is ahead of your hand in that sense. If you have this, it becomes a slave to the process. It just doesn't. I mean, again, there's people who can do it and they can do it well and they can do it in a fluid, convincing way. I don't know how. It's never been how I make a comic. I just kind of push forward. And interestingly enough, that's how Miyazaki makes movies. Like, and it's why the endings of some of his films are not really good. And I say that, you know, like he doesn't make, of course he doesn't make bad films. He's ridiculous.
Sure.
But there are times where you're just like, huh? And it's because he just moves forward in the film, you know. He wants to be surprised.
Yes,
well.
And I think sorry, I'm like shouting there. I'm like, I think that's the one thing I love about drawing is that surprise that you can bring yourself. And I'm working on a project right now for a visualizer for an artist, and I'm animating, and you're just drawing the same frame. I'm not an animator. Like, my full deepest respect to animators. Like, it's such a labor intensive, like, gnarly practice. It's crazy. Yeah, it's hard to draw the same thing over and over, when I think I do enjoy that surprise of making an image or like following a story most.
Yeah, no. It's even in a comic, I don't want to draw the same person over and over.
Right.
It's like some strange hang up. But what is the end goal? Like, looks like it's like 50-ish pages at the moment.
That first part's like 50-ish, 53, 54, who knows, pages. And I think it's going to be about 4 or 5 parts. I don't know. However long really the story is going to take. It could be shorter than that or longer. But I mean, the plan is I would ideally like to find a publisher for it. And I've been looking around. I've had an agent, but it's been a very slow process, and she's kind of more in the novel world. And so I'm assessing my options here, but it's one that I'm not like trying to rush to get out. I just like, this is my project that's completely mine, you know, and I feel like I want to take time, enough time to like make sure it's what I'm hoping for it to be, or something. But not too much time to have me not make it, you know.
Of course. It's the longest comic you've worked on?
Yes. Yeah, it is. And so I feel like it's been a big learning process for me to spend so much time on one project. And like you said, it kind of, you find different parts of your practice through doing it. And I'm almost excited to see what the end thing is going to look like. So I'm kind of waiting on myself of being like, all right, man, when are you going to finish your projects? I want to see where this goes, you know?
Do you have a page count that you're shooting for?
No, I mean, a loose projection might be 250, somewhere between 200 and 300 pages, maybe.
Oh, nice. I like the ambition.
Yeah, no, it's definitely ambitious. But that's the thing is if I can get a publisher's eye on it or something, or even if I do release it myself, there's the possibility of releasing it in parts, even though the main thing at the end in my head is a, you know, completed novel. But I don't know. That's the bringing it out to people in the physical sense. I don't know which is the best route nowadays with internet and publishers. I feel like the old way of doing things makes you want some validation of being like, you know, I have a book on Image or Dark Horse or something. But it's like, it may not even make that much of a difference anymore.
Yeah, no, I would just do it 300.
Yeah.
I think it's really good to have a really tangible component to the project that, you know, either did or you didn't do yet.
Right.
And you let all the other kind of abstract things play out within that tight framework. That shit's going to take a while, though. Not to discourage you, I'm just being real.
Oh, trust me, I know it's already taken much longer than I thought it would in the beginning. And I feel like I've hit this level of patience with it where I'm like, okay with that. And I'm okay with the timing. Like, obviously, I feel like I'm gearing my work to try and get me in a spot where I can build up enough that I can take off like a good chunk of time to like dedicate to the comic.
Nice.
But yeah, man, right now I'm just working on it where I can.
Is it all just inked? Is there
this one? Yeah, no, this is 100% just ink on paper. I will, there will be a colored version at some point. I'm trying to decide. I think I want to color it, but then I imagine that process and I'm like, oh, that's just a double. That's like drawing the comic twice, but then with the colors.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just like, oh my God, the physical limitations.
I mean, you could do a reduced color like black and red.
Yeah,
that's kind of a nice look. But
very true.
Nice when you make real pages because you can sell them.
Yeah, so right now I've got a little binder full of drawings and just like, I don't know, that's another thing I need to figure out more is just like this mass accumulation of drawings that I'm finding myself hiding under.
Right. So in terms of where you're trying to go, what's like the biggest ambition?
That's a good question. I feel like in my 20s, I could have answered that quickly or been like, I want to do this, that. And I feel like I don't have something necessarily specific in mind right now, but other than ways that I want to express myself, like I find enjoyment in doing new projects, right? So like, I love doing this stuff in music. The comic, I'm loving that. Like, I'm trying to think of the stage design was really fun. Like I loved that just because it was a new project too. And then I think as long as I'm just trying something new, then I hope that I will be like satiated. But for me, it's definitely chasing that. Like I want to make something new and to test myself and my capabilities. Like truthfully, I imagine I want to do like a show of this comic when I finish it. I think either animation or stop motion or in some capacity. I think it could be interesting to go into filmmaking. I have some friends that do that and have some conversations with them and just realizing that it's not that far off from making a comic, so that could be an interesting route in the future. But honestly, yeah, man, I just want to be engaged in my work. I want to be like growing, doing as best as I can. And I don't know, truthfully, yeah, have fun, make something I can hopefully be semi proud of,
I respect that. I mean, it sounds like the comic is that thing.
Yes, as of right now. And that's where we'll I know there is going to be life after the comic, hopefully. Hopefully.
There is.
I'll keep going.
There is life after comics.
But the comic's great. Just making something. I feel like for me, the process of making art or being involved with it around you has really kind of taken on, like you said, this like spiritual kind of role in like feeding you in such like a crazy time. It does feel like you've seen those memes, right? Where it's like the world burning or whatever. And it's like people shouting like, hey, buy my prints or something.
No.
Well, I'll have to send you some.
I think I get it.
But yeah, no, there's definitely moments where you feel like that, where you're like, God damn it. Like there's so much stuff happening and I'm just like making these funny drawings. But also I think that's too much pressure to put on yourself to be like, well, if you weren't drawing, you could definitely, fix everything.
It's confusing, but there is a kind of a weird arrogance to thinking you can fix the world or change it even. But it's also a very, I don't know. I don't fully believe what I just said because that's completely disempowering. But I think the truth is like you can change the world for the better, but like in a really, really, really small way.
100%.
And the hope is that then keeps dominoing to others. But yeah, I just don't think we're meant to even know about that much like 100%. Bullshit. But yeah, I never believed that shit where people will be like, can you believe that? Like, how am I supposed to make art after this or that tragic event? It's like, that's the whole point.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, what else are you gonna do? Like, I don't know. You're not gonna go and like help out the people in that immediate vicinity. It's
exactly.
like,
but also like there's literally horrible shit happening everywhere all the time. It's just a matter of like literally trying to know about it. So you could be making that argument all the time.
And no, and really, and I think especially, you know, as time progresses, and I think even with this AI stuff, I think that makes us so uncomfortable, at least as an artist, because it forces you to confront, like, why are you making this stuff? Like, does it matter if something else can make it better than you? Why does that make you feel bad? You know, like, and just kind of like getting to this, the core of those emotions and kind of your own insignificance in a way that is empowering enough for you to be like, man, okay, I am in this physical body. I guess I can do these things relatively well. How far can I like take this and, you know, and not tie it to, I don't know, necessarily the outcome so much as really the participation of the process.
Yeah, the way I see it is process is a personal, selfish concern in some ways.
Yeah.
And then because think about it, like there's so much art, contemporary art that's based on process that no one, like, who gives a shit? It's like, I don't care how you made the thing that I'm now looking at.
Right.
I think there's something weirdly narcissistic about that. Like, I, as a viewer, I just care about essentially what is being viewed. You know, that's the ideal, that the art is strong enough in that way. Process be damned, you know, like process is like exercise for the artist. That's a great thing. But I'm always suspicious when I'm supposed to be told that like this artwork is relevant because of how it was made, not by, you know, what I'm seeing.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely, it can't lift all of that on its own.
Yeah. So like the AI is a little frightening in the sense of that in some ways, right? Like,
right.
I'm not sure that most people give a fuck about how art is made who are like consuming or using it for illustration. And that's kind of the scarier part to me.
Right. So like commercially, it's terrifying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's fully that shit can take you out of a job. But I think for me, whereas I feel like I've attached drawing to just like myself and just being a human, I feel like that may fuck me up commercially and I'll figure that out when I have to. But for me in my relationship of art, I would like to think that hopefully it won't affect that too much.
Totally. I think it's just cool when you can actually do commercial work as an artist to sustain the other stuff. And I mean, you know, shit changes. So I'm just real curious to see like if editorial illustration is just wiped.
So in that,
you know,
could definitely see that happening, and maybe not. And I think to your point earlier, not in the dark sense of people love to see the suffering, but I think especially as AI comes, maybe some people will recognize the effort and suffering that goes into making work and will maybe, you know, try to champion shittier human-made artwork.
Exactly. That's the truth. It'll become like a boutique.
Exactly.
Goddamn, but here I am talking about AI. So it's not what I wanted to do.
My bad. No, that's not. I mean, it's a real thing. It's on the horizon, and like, funnily enough, like it's affecting artists. And who thought, like, at least for me, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I never would have thought it would merge worlds. You know?
Yeah, I don't think I was. In essence, I think we all thought our jobs were safe, and I think that's the naive part. You know, like
yeah. Or even, I think maybe too, for me, there's like this inherent non-safeness that I've accepted as choosing to do this path, that there's kind of like, I chose a path of chaos, so kind of more chaos isn't going to make a difference to me.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. It's like, so the future is so unreadable. And
yeah,
I try to emphasize. Yeah, I mean, typically if you're creative and generative, like you can do a lot of different things. It's not just the one job that is going to get displaced or replaced.
100%.
My only fear in that equation really is like if people can discern the difference between, you know, like a human made thing and a computer made thing. Like, especially like imagine you were born today, right? And then as you grew as a human, like a lot of the things you saw were generated by AI.
Yeah, no, and maybe that's going to be super difficult. Maybe there will be classes where some old head is going to teach the young kids how to be like, all right, kids, this is how you spot the difference.
True.
But I don't know. I mean, right now at its current stage, you can see it with like, I always look at like the fingers or limbs. There's always some kind of uncanny valley thing happening in AI art.
Totally.
Which may get ironed out. And I mean, like, that's, again, I know, we said we weren't going to talk about this, but with the deep fake stuff, it's just, I think our reliance on what is real or not is going to be very interesting to figure out later.
Yeah, my optimistic take is like, there's going to be people who just abandon the internet completely because no information, no visual data you see on it will be verifiable. And so you'll just have like these kind of Amish retreats where like people make paintings again and build real shit.
People will be tabling, selling their comics.
Yeah, real stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm just waiting for the first comic controversy where like, you know, someone makes like a best-selling comic and then people find out, oh, they just like
written and illustrated by
an AI. Yeah. Like they made like 10 drawings to give it reference and then it just like shit this thing out, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. But that, and again, that I feel like that whole thing is just really forces you to confront like, okay, am I literally just a consumer? Am I just eating shit? Or why am I looking at stuff? Why do I like take things in, you know? So I think it is definitely, there's going to be multiple types of people that maybe will love that. I think there's definitely going to be people, you know, that will have their opinions against that. Yeah, for sure.
Whatever's the cheapest way to do an illustration.
Yep. I mean, you have that now with Fiverr. I don't know anybody that's actually done that, but that shit's crazy to me.
No, I have to compete with that for like graphic design logos sometimes. Like
you do? I'm sorry.
Well, no, what I do is if someone's like a really bad communicator immediately, it's not an insult, but they definitely take it as one. I just go like, yeah, you know what? I don't really think this is a good fit for us. So just go to this website. And then I just link Fiverr. And
you send them to Fiverr?
Yeah, I do.
That's hilarious.
Because I can tell when someone wants like something cheap and superficial.
That's its own response. You're saying something by sending them to Fiverr.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
You got any jokes? I usually ended on a joke.
Man, I listened to a couple of your podcasts
and
on the joke things. I knew. I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I just don't have a joke.
You're going to pass.
Yeah, I'm going to pass, or I'm going to tell, you know, you or someone else to, you know, seek out some new comedy.
Okay.
And, you know, take charge in finding that joke yourself.
So, wow, that's a bit aggressive, but I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it too. I'm hope that we get to hang out a little bit more in the future next time you come back out to LA.
Or you come out to New Jersey.
Deal. I actually haven't been. I've only been to New York for a few days, so maybe I do.
I live like 20 minutes from Manhattan, so.
Hey, there you go. No, I would love to, actually. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, dude. All right, so I'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Peace.
Bye.
Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next up, we have Brad Hawk.